own presentations or control models in Nordic businesses and the role of the public and the private for sustainability as food of thought. So firstly, I hopefully now, I mean, after our adventures, you see my slides, and then, so we have been discussing about the Nordic and Nordic businesses, and I have made these some couple of comments concerning what kind of businesses do we have in for instance, in the Nordic countries, and emphasizing the role of small and medium-sized enterprises, and also businesses that are not feeling some kind of, let's say, the standard academic interest that is a listed limited liability company. So what is the ecology of businesses? And here, on the point of view of control models. So here, as an overview or as some kind of let's say contents of my short presentation. So what I'm now concentrating on different kind of control structures in the businesses. So definitely there are large firms. There are small firms. 99% of the businesses are, of course, small and medium-sized enterprises. That we must keep in mind all the time. The vast majority of enterprises are small and medium-sized sole entrepreneurs, partnerships, small companies, and small cooperatives. But the truth is that there is also larger firms. They are controlled by families. That is a typical control mechanism. So families, even persons, one person. Jason mentioned one Nordic company, IKEA, that was owned that has only one control holder, Iva Kamprad. Nowadays, it's a foundation. So he transferred the control before his death to a foundation. A typical arrangement. Firstly, families or sole entrepreneurs, they're creating businesses, and then they are transferring. If they are not trusting their family, they are transferring the control to a foundation. Thirdly, public actors. Public actors, different kind of public actors are important control holders in the Nordic countries. State, yes, but also municipalities and other public entities. More a bit later in detail. But these SMEs, and I cannot never underestimate or emphasize too much about SMEs, and also cooperatives that are important business form. And important question is there how the control, the dispersed control between various members is affecting the business model itself. At the same time, there is a tradition of stakeholder engagement and dissemination, how businesses interact the rest of the society they are part of. And here we have talking about different kind of different types of sustainability, and in that sense, we can call this model as a Nordic. So it is a typical weak sustainability. It is very directly connected to growth and the how the Nordic welfare state were built after the Second World War, and in that sense, it is very growth let's say focus. It is a business to consumer focused. So, and here comes that is sometimes also connected to the Nordic model, stakeholder thinking. Somebody says that the whole concept of stakeholders was originally a Nordic invention. But anyway, the stakeholder idea, especially in the 1970s, emphasizing consumers and employees, and then mostly manifested in a specific consumer protection legislation and also labor law. So sort of idea, this is the mainstream view of the Nordic model in literature. It's outside in model of governance. So some kind of idea that the world, the planet is affecting the cooperation, not vice versa. And this, as mentioned by those enthusiastic, especially in the United States, who thinks that the Nordic model is something special. But anyway, not stopping there. It is, so then from here comes some kind of what I call implicit corporate social responsibility. The idea is not sustainability, but it's an idea of taking into consideration the stakeholders. So those who we imagine to be stakeholders. So here we see this. And so this kind of thing, and this is the tension or balance. So or is it tension or balance, or are they strengthening with each other? Is it a concentrated economic power to these control holders, public, hybrid, and private hands? That is described also as mixed ownership, typical for the Nordic models also. They are historical development for why this is the case. Lack of capital after the Second World War, and especially in those countries that maybe suffered quite a lot from the war from various reasons, Norway and Finland. And secondly, constant series of bank crises. So what is typical for Nordics? It is Nordics. They are some kind of floating from a bank crisis to bank crisis, and especially I can mention here what has been a fundamental, let's say, long-term importance is Norway 1988, Finland 1991, and Iceland 2008, and then. Of course, we cannot, let's say, when I'm talking about the Nordics, so we cannot, we want to forget it, but we cannot forget oil, Norway 1967. And that has, of course, let's say, affected and emphasized this idea of, let's say, mixed ownership. And then definitely, so it's not of small importance. This creation of pan-Nordic cooperation. They are so the when the union were dissolved in the end of 15th century. So and the Nordic area was split between different. Firstly empires and then countries, let's say modern small countries. So there has been also different marketplaces and listings in several Nordic stock exchanges. And there has been so that and these marketplaces have been too small even for the Nordic companies. And then there has been, let's say, listing in several Nordic stock exchanges to get some kind of exchange. And so convergence through ownership. So a company, a corporation with a corporate governance system has been listed in several stock exchanges and then influenced those corporate governance cultures. And not small thing is convergence when you think about is, of course, satisfaction of international investors, also international institutional investors. And this has been, let's say, at least as a lip service, been or have affected the Nordic corporate governance codes that has also had some kind of convergence effect. Not talking about convergence of law through, let's say, more or less successful harmonization. Although corporate law has not been successfully harmonized. But anyway, harmonization through, I mean, when we're talking about the regulatory ecology, so from markets and partially social norms. And one thing is, of course, then it was might have been, let's say, quite peculiar, but now I think more and more history is collective ownership, because I mean direct ownership by retail investors. So I mean you have been sparing, has been as called as stock sparer. So you have been investing directly the stock, Nordic stock. And this has been a bit like, let's say, extraordinary. I remember that when I was younger and I was preparing certain international treaties on behalf of the Finnish government in my previous life. So this was something very, very up to date, that the Nordic model was different because it was direct holding. So not indirect through intermediaries, but more or less this start to be a bit like history, but cooperatives are still a vehicle and a form of collective ownership. They are small and big cooperatives, so millions and millions of Nordics are members in various cooperative enterprises. And of course, this is one thing about concerning, so what kind of business model it is. It is incentives to consumption. Every day, when you have a cooperative, when you have a coop, every day is a Black Friday. So in that sense, you are rewarded of consumption. And this is one thing, of course, there in this thread. But definitely collective ownership has been, of course, been a connection factor with, and then explaining the stakeholder model, state, as I mentioned, but not only the states directly, but also indirectly as institutional investors. And I think this on the top, the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, that is still the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. But as I mentioned, do not forget municipalities, family, and the others, families and the individuals and foundations, especially Denmark. So going through quickly on these issues, so there are differences between Nordic countries. Emphasize. So Danish model is the foundation model. They are the foundations who are controlling big businesses. So they are Carlsberg, Novo Nordisk, AP Møller foundations, and then strong cooperative movement, no strong state ownership. Denmark is an exception, but strong SME first thinking. So here we see. And then Norwegian model, so that's a role of the state. It's not only oil. So 1967, and then the Norwegian state oil company 1972, now and with a merger with Norsk Hydro, and then it was called Statoil. And of course, in these days, when you should not be called what you are, it is Equinor. But also the sovereign wealth funds. Bank crisis, when the largest bank in Norway was dropped in the hands of the state and still had owning or having a negative control there, and big listed companies in state control, Telenor, Yara, Kongsberg Group, that is one of the most leading arms conglomerates in the world, and also then part of the Nordic welfare state is that vices should be in the hands of the state. Would it be gambling or booze? And this is of course very Nordic. Gambling and booze should be in the public hands. And this is counterbalanced by again with the small and medium-sized enterprises. So strong personified ownership also, and these cooperatives. Swedish model, again, families and foundations, one of the most famous families in economic history. Wallenberg family, I think many know it from a different, let's say, in circumstances, but definitely, but Kamprad as a young generation, let's say, a family. again, this idea of that we directly invest in companies as I mean, stakeholders, shareholder stakeholders, but also state, against state, and also vices. So vices in the hand of the state. And same with Finland, vices, but also energy, as in Sweden, energy, and also Norway, and definitely, especially after the destruction of the house bank model, after the bank crisis, more and more in the hands of public or hybrid pension companies and funds, still in families, mutual and cooperatives important, and foundations, and the state. The state's important again in energy and vices. So here we see that this is the let's say the possibility and even and the challenge, long-term or super long-term ownership. So interest of end beneficiary, would they be family, employees, local communities, citizens, or future generations, as claimed by the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund. And here, quite weak non-executive boards that can be seen, as we emphasize with Beate, so strong boards. Again, this might be a challenge. But commitment might be the commitment, active ownership in spite of corporate governance codes. The danger might be politicization, but as I mentioned, do not forget the SMEs that connect the business to the society. And banks, they are still important banks here. So, and Iceland was a laboratory. I mean, it was very financial sector dominant, and then it collapsed, and now it has partially joined the state-centered family. Trends, shortly about the trends. And what then?
Sorry, Jukka, just to say that has to be very shortly because you are over time now.
Okay, sorry. So this is sorry. I mean, I'm over time. So this is, I think, is what is important. So I think, and then the stakeholder engagement and dissemination, and here concentration on trade unions and consumers, and what is the failure is indigenous communities. So here is the struggles between ownership and responsibility. It is, especially from the financial markets, shareholder primacy drive, some kind of, let's say, weak corporate social responsibility, and on the other hand, short of shareholder activism in the long-term owners and control holders. So tension between value maximization and sustainability interest is the problem. How there is this, all these possibilities that create possibility to let's say a control holder driven sustainability, but there is always value maximization. And what is the value maximization is of course for the end users, the citizens, the tension, the pension fund or the state. I mean, the welfare of the state or the citizens versus the future of the citizens or new generations. So this is, I think, this is possibilities and even threats.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Jukka. We now have a few minutes left for some questions directly to Jukka before we take a break and then move over to the panel discussion. So who would like